Hey everybody! Today I want to tell you a little bit of a story about me and snakes. Believe it or not, for almost my entire life, I have been terrified, petrified, unconsolable when it comes to snakes. I was one of those people who was under the impression that snakes were out to get you. It wasn't until this year that I got over that fear. But let me back up a little bit and tell you more about that fear. So when I was just a very small child, I don't think that I was actually afraid of snakes. It wasn't until later that I became afraid. I remember very distinctly having like toy snakes, like rubber snakes and whatnot when I was a kid. But I was raised by someone who was terrified of snakes. My mother, actually, to this day, still believes that snakes are evil. Why would you want that? They're so evil. They're so slimy. They're so gross. You know, just parroting every myth about snakes that there are. I remember when I was very young, there was a garter snake in my yard, and I thought it was the coolest thing ever. And I tried to play with it. Until, of course, my mom stopped me and came and took me inside the house and shut and locked all the doors and windows. I remember having a rubber toy snake when I was a kid that I used to love playing with. Until one day, I decided that because my mom was afraid of snakes, it would be funny if I put my rubber snake in the refrigerator and she found it. And she did. And then I wasn't allowed to have toy snakes anymore. And from that point on, she started teaching me the evils of snakes. Maybe a year after the toy snake incident, I remember this one particular trip to the zoo that I went to with my mom and some friends and their mom. And we were outside the reptile house, and one of the zookeepers came out with probably, I would say maybe a juvenile Burmese python. Maybe it was a female ball python, and he was holding it, and it was a pretty big snake. Zookeeper came out with this snake, sat down on the bench, and was letting all the kids come and pet it and touch it, and my friends went and did it. Their mom went and did it, and my mom gave me she just looked at me with this most judgmental look and said, "Do you want to go pet the snake?" I looked at the snake and I wanted to, and then I looked at my mom and I said, "No." And she goes, "Good boy." I don't know exactly what was the turning point for me to make me afraid of snakes, and I love my mom very much, but I'm almost certain it was her fault. A fear of snakes actually did develop. I remember there was this one time when I was maybe 10 years old. I was raking the leaves in the yard, and I raked them all into a big pile, and then I wanted to play in that pile. And so I went and jumped in the pile of leaves, and a garter snake slithered out. And I screamed, and I panicked, and I ran into the house. I remember another incident where it was raining outside, and I went out into the backyard. We had a sliding glass door, and there was, just a little bit of a step to get down onto the patio from the back door, maybe 3-4 inches. And I go outside, and then I turn around, and I see a snake sitting there underneath the door on the patio. And it's just trying to escape from the rain. But I remember screaming and panicking and jumping over it to get into the house, thinking it was going to bite me and follow me in, and demanding that my dad go outside and kill the snake. And he did. He decapitated it with a shovel. And this fear of snakes continued into adulthood. I couldn't even watch snakes on TV. If I was watching a TV show and a snake came on the screen, I would leave the room until that scene was over, or I would just turn it off. So fast forward to this year, I have my fish tanks and everything, and I decide that I want to get a leopard gecko. And the more and more research into leopard geckos that I did, the more and more these reptile channels started popping up. And it was snake videos that were popping up. And for a while there, I was like, no, it's not for me. No thank you, I just want a leopard gecko. But then about the time that I actually got the gecko was about the time I decided I wanted to confront this fear once and for all. And so I started intentionally watching these videos about snakes. And then before you know it, I go from watching videos about snakes to watching videos about keeping snakes as pets. Finally, I decided, you know what? I think I'm ready to handle one. I went to a reptile expo here in town, specifically just to handle snakes, just to pick up and hold snakes. And within the first 5 minutes, I was comfortable with them. A breeder put a ball python in my hand that was all balled up. It was just a baby, and it was balled up because it was scared, and that was it. Fear was gone. I walked around that expo and I looked at all of the snakes. I was fascinated by the different species and the different morphs. Over the course of that day, I held probably 5 or 6 different snakes. And then eventually, as I'm walking around, I found this booth. They had this gorgeous, all-white ball python with silver eyes. And I was just fascinated by him. I asked to hold him. And they put him in my hands. And he didn't ball up like all the others. He crawled right up my arm and wrapped himself around. And I knew he was the one for me. I just knew instantly that that was my snake. And I took him home. To be honest, I was still a little afraid of him for a while. If you watch my video, I Got a Pet Snake, there's a moment in that video where he yawns and I flinch. It took me several weeks to figure out how to pick him up. The longer and longer that I've had him, the more and more comfortable with him I became. The first couple of weeks that I had him, I wouldn't even let his head look towards me. I would keep his head pointed away from me at all times, like, ugh. But I got to know him, and now I realize he doesn't think I'm food. The more I hold him, the more comfortable I am with him, and the more comfortable he is with me. He's my little buddy now. I enjoy having him. I enjoy holding him. I enjoy spending time with him. And there you have it. That's my story about being afraid of snakes and getting over it. Now I want to hear from you guys. Are you afraid of snakes? Are you afraid of any animals? Are you interested in conquering that fear? Tell me about it in the comments. Thanks for watching, everyone. Bye.